We'd now like to welcome all of you all to our trialogue on attracting diverse talent and inclusive recruitment. How does one really embed a culture of inclusion, of diversity and equality in each stage of the employee life cycle? What are the connecting points between true inclusion and organizational identity and employee retention? Also touching upon by our session speakers right here will be effective training strategies for driving an inclusive organization culture. So a lot more happening right here. We look forward to receiving questions from our viewers, because now I'm about to introduce to you our speakers. A very warm welcome to Ms. Tanvi Rohatgi, People Director, India and Southeast Asia, InBev, as I also extend a very warm welcome to Ms. Lavanya Shriganesh, Corporate Social Responsibility, Diversity and Inclusion Leader, Genpact. May I also extend a warm welcome to Mr. Krishna Raghavan, Chief People Officer, FlipKart, and a very warm welcome to our moderator, Ms. Sreyssha George, Managing Director and Partner, BCG India. And let us look forward to this very, very interesting session. Over to you, Ms. George.
Thanks, Sreyssha. Thank you for the warm welcome, and actually very excited to have Lavanya, Tanvi, and Krishna today. I think we have the right mix to get a good sense of the nuances of how to actually think about D&Y in our spaces. So with enough context setting done, I will dive straight in. And Tanvi, let me start with you. Everybody talks about diversity and inclusion. I think, we've, at least in our study, seen that 98% organizations even have policies, processes in place. But the reality of whether it's truly been embedded is very different. So I'm curious to know, how do you think about the agenda and what are the goals for your organization?
Thank you so much, Sreyssha. Firstly, I wanted to thank you and the panel. It's an honorable and a very exciting opportunity to be sharing thoughts here. And Sreyssha, you from BCG, you know the data points at the back of your hand. So let me also first start sharing some data points. There's this consulting report which says that companies with greater than 30% women executives are more likely to outperform companies with less percentage. And in fact, another report says that greater than 80% of the millennials, they feel that they are much more engaged with work when their employers provide a truly diverse and inclusive workplace culture. Right? With these data points, it just becomes imperative that we have to have a more inclusive company. So we at AB InBev, we imbibe Sreyssha D&I in every single aspect of our policies and culture, so that people can bring their true authentic selves. And I would like to address your question by dividing it into two parts. The first part is how do we improve the D&I? And the second part is how do we enable the diversity and inclusion in our company? And if I talk about the first piece, which is improving the D&I, I would like to start sharing an example to give more context onto this. We took a very big challenge upon ourselves a few years ago, especially in the context of alcobev industry, on improving our gender diversity in breweries. And I'm very happy to share that our breweries in Maharashtra, they have achieved a 50-50 gender ratio on the shop floor. Honestly, wow. It exactly right. Thank you for that. It wasn't a small feat, trust me. It was a Herculean task because it took us a lot of effort to help bring educational institutes, parents, local community, educate them. Right. The second, just to elaborate on another initiative, we have a recurring D&I committee. So what it means is that we make a group. It's not the HR, it's not the people team that makes these policies. We actually invite everyone to share their thoughts and what is working, what is not working to attract and develop and engage diverse talent. Now I would go into the second piece of your question on how to enable the D&I. And at AB InBev, we truly, truly live by our principles. And actually one of our principles says that we recruit people better than ourselves, and we are known by the quality and diversity of our teams. So what it basically means is that while meritocracy is the North Star, and we don't believe in quotas, but ensuring that every single person in the room, when they are discussing about the talent, they have no bias, they keep meritocracy at the top, and they ensure that everyone can bring their authentic selves. And the second piece is having the right data to support the right policies. So while not only we continuously listen to our employees via human interactions, but we also have AI to continuously keep the pulse check and listening to our employees. And what that has helped us, Sreyssha, in terms of bringing the relevant policies is we have unlimited wellness leaves. We have 3 months of adoption leaves for LGBTQ+. We have also an inclusive insurance coverage for the same sex partners. And we also build allies. So all these initiatives help us have the North Star clear on the D&I. And while honestly, we have come a long way, but we are continuously looking to consciously embed D&I in our value chain.
Great, Tanvi. That was a great start, because I think you laid it out quite comprehensively. First of all, congrats. Getting to 50-50 in some of the breweries. There are clearly pockets where we've succeeded, and there are pockets where we have not. And in many times, some of the hands-on ops and factories are really where we've not seen too much movement. So this is great to hear. I actually want to go to Krishna now and talk about the other segment where we've not made too much traction, right? So leadership is an area where, although a lot has been discussed on DNY, and in certain cases, even having large proportions of diverse employees, but you don't see the needle move much when it comes to leadership. Your thoughts and what is really the challenge that we need to solve for?
Absolutely. Great question, and a very relevant question actually for these times. And I completely agree with you, because I think overall, while we see diversity numbers improve in many organizations, I think it's still a very important problem to address at the leadership level. And in our experience at FlipKart as well, and as we look at it, I think there are a few reasons that come in the way, and I'd like to speak about them and what we specifically are doing about some of these, right, in more detail. The first one is, I believe that there are certain aspects in the individual itself, like from a mental barrier perspective, that they experience at mid-management, and that we really need to be able to proactively manage their career and specifically chart out what their aspiration is and how can they reach the role that they aspire to. And this requires a lot of leadership sponsorship as well. So that's one area that I would like to point out. And also women go through specifically a few transitions that happen. I think the 3 M's, right? Maternity, marriage, mobility. And how do you actually design specific programs in this regard to actually solve for these transitions and enable them to come back and pick up roles in the future? So for instance, at FlipKart, we have a program called the Mom on Board program, where we enable mothers who are actually coming off maternity, and how do we actually facilitate the career transitions for them? Similarly, how do you actually even have flexi part work, part pay programs? Because you need to facilitate those kind of constructs for women who may be transitioning through different life stages. And also, I think I talked about this leadership transition piece at mid-management. I think we have a program in FlipKart called Catalyst, which actually is focused on enabling mid-management leaders to pick up larger roles in the company. And this is where I think a lot of investments need to happen in companies around how do you craft bespoke development programs, because no one individual is the same. So how do you actually create these bespoke programs and enable them to actually walk that career path? And we've seen great success when we've done that within FlipKart. For us, the other aspect that I'd like to speak about is, given that we are a tech-driven company, many of the leadership positions, irrespective of whether you're on technology or in supply chain or in business, it requires a lot of technical acumen as well, just from an understanding. You don't need to really be a coder perspective, but you need to have that tech understanding. So one of the things that we've also consciously done is to be able to offer various career roles across diverse functional areas. You might have been in category, but can you pick up a role in product management, thereby giving you this additional skill? So these are some of the things that we've done over our experience at FlipKart in particular that enables more diversity at leadership. I'd also like to touch upon one more aspect here. I also think we need to take bold bets and bold actions at leadership diversity. One of the things we've tried really, and it's sort of an experiment that we're doing, is instead of looking at roles within the organization and saying, okay, how can I bring diverse talent at the leadership level? Can you look at diverse talent that exists in the marketplace and challenge yourself and say, are there roles within the company that you can create for them as well? right? And that's a very different way of looking at the problem. And lastly, we've also made sure that we have leadership, ownership, and accountability towards diversity targets at the senior director, vice president level at FlipKart. And by driving that accountability along with the people team, we've made a lot of progress over the last couple of years.
Great. Now that's great to hear, Krishna. And I really like 2 points you made. One is around the planning for those moments of truth, right? When it comes to transitions, and the segment of one approach of saying that every person's challenges, issues are different, and how do you solve for it? So great tips there. You touched upon a very interesting area, which is, how do we expand the pools that we hire from? How do we actually think differently if we want the org to look different? So Lavanya, I'll come to you on this. You surely have a much broader view with sustainability and D&I in your portfolio. So I was curious to understand, how are you thinking, both from D&I perspective, but also very realistically with the talent war that's going on, right? How are you thinking about a broader pool that we can look into? You're on mute.
Terrible habit. But look, I think as you think of the war of talent, one part is getting the talent into the system. I mean, at Genpact, one of the things we've been very focused on is really leveraging our ability to upskill. And if you look at what happened with the pandemic, we had to get virtual. I think organizations progressed almost 10 years ahead of time in that space. And we really use that as an opportunity to work with bringing in more diverse pools into the organization. I mean, Tanvi's talked about the fact that, you need to really focus on attracting that talent, bring it in as a conscious decision. Krishna's talked about the fact that you have to have an ecosystem around them in order to build them, particularly as you want to look at going up the ladder. And in order for that to happen, skilling needs to be part of your plan. And therefore, those are some of the things that we think about as we look at diverse pools, whether it be from a sustainability perspective or from a DEI perspective, or just the right thing to do because we have that talent out there in the market, and it's criminal to not be able to create those kinds of opportunities around them. So we have a tool that's called Genome. We use that, and one of the versions of the tool is Adapt and Rise. We've created it as open source to all those available who want to leverage it. And therefore, we create a skilling structure, we create an onboarding structure, and we create a support structure when this talent is coming into the system. I can tell you through the pandemic, one of the things that we wanted to do was to support women who lost the primary breadwinner of the household, who perhaps had not had work for the last 7 to 10 years, and had chosen to take a career break for family reasons. So we focused on a 5 to 6 week skilling plan before hiring, during hiring, and during onboarding, so that they would have successful careers. And I think that's the important thing. It's not just about bringing talent into the system, it's about creating successful careers. When you think of the leadership layer, this is something we've done very consciously at Genpact, because it's not about filling the base. Honestly, that's easily enough done. It's about building that pipeline and making sure you have leadership within the organization. We're 50% diverse, gender diverse on our board. We're 45% gender diverse on our Genpact Leadership Council, which is Tiger and his team of direct reports. And we see that kind of traction happening across the entire spectrum. One part is bringing in talent. Look, I mean, diversity that way is a fact. You can make it happen if you say, I want to make it happen. It's about creating that space of inclusion, about that space of belonging where people want to stay with your organization. So having data and metrics where you're tracking your progress and growth is critical, because it's a dynamic space. You have to keep readjusting the levers to make sure your organization continues to be diverse. So some of the things that we've done, we created a women's leadership program in partnership with Harvard Business Publishing. It was an 18-month program where we've created a promotion criteria at the end of successful completion. And
Right.
it certainly best in class. So that is a meaningful step. You put the effort in, you get the output. What was most interesting about this program is, unlike most development programs, there was no nomination. We didn't look at how people were performing. We said, you have to sign up. It is
nice.
you to sign up. So we wanted to make the process completely bias-free. And I think that's critical. I feel like we've moved ahead from unconscious bias to more of conscious inclusion, because that's becoming the more critical thing. Recognizing you have biases is one part of it. I think what you're going to do about it is the more critical part of it. And therefore, conscious inclusion is one of the pieces that we are really, really focusing on, whether it be from a manager perspective, whether it be during performance development, whether it be at the recruitment stage, whether it be at the leadership layer as well. So I think it's one of those programs that you can't say you've cracked the code. I mean, you've heard all of us, everyone's doing things. It's about keeping your foot on the accelerator and recognizing you've never quite crossed the finish line. So you keep evolving as you progress.
Yeah, great, Lavanya. I love the term of conscious inclusion. I think I'm surely taking that away. And thank you for some of those specifics. I'll maybe come to Tanvi to just build on top of that. You know, you are seeing multiple geographies, right? Whether it's India and Southeast Asia. And we discussed that by cohort, the challenges are different. By functional skills, like Krishna said, you know, there's need for more tech versus, you know, others. Are there some learnings, you know, that the audience can take away, and anything interesting you're seeing in other markets, especially that we should be conscious about?
Definitely, Sreyssha. Thank you so much for that question. And I would like to build on what Lavanya said, the development program. I think it's also very common for us. Getting people is the easy part. But the moment they start to rise the ladder and other priorities of life start to come in, that's the critical point when you need to support them. And what we have also done is the layer just below the leadership level, which is where they need actually the maximum support. We have created a dedicated development program, which we call as Women Leadership Development Program. And we have seen the same thing, not only in India, but in China too. And they have their own version. And we have seen a very, very high retention, because not only has it given the confidence to that talent group on what they can achieve, but also, you know, you get that feeling that I'm not alone in this. There's someone guiding me through and through as a mentor. That is one thing that we have seen, Sreyssha. Another one is, while COVID has taken a big toll on all of us, but there are a few cohorts which have seen this play out more for them, and which is why we have extended something called as Better Up Coaching. So wherein we put talent, diverse groups into it, and they can seek mentoring here across different aspects of their life. So it's just not the professional thing. If you want to get coaching on how to eat, how to sleep, even basic things like that, in addition to, you know, having a difficult conversation with your manager, with your team, that has really again helped the teams develop a good, positive relationship, a trustworthy environment.
Right. That's great. And you know, I think the trigger of COVID, maybe I'll ask you, Krishna, this question. You know, it's worked in both directions, right? I think at the beginning, we were all very excited to not travel, you know, and now we'll end up somewhere in a hybrid state, hopefully. What do you think is the, you know, the impact of the pandemic? You know, are you seeing more positive stuff on the D&I side, on the recruitment side, on the people side, or is it all still too ambiguous to make comments on it?
No, I think, Sreyssha, I think it's a great question, because I see more positive coming out of it. And generally I'm an optimistic person, so I'll try to look at the positive side a lot more. But I'll give you a few examples. I think the pandemic has also probably forced a rethought in the way people think about their careers and what's possible versus what's not possible. And people are challenging themselves a lot more. So we've seen people take up very cross-functional roles across the company. We have a very active internal talent mobility program. So we see a lot more diverse talent coming through the ranks, where they're applying for roles that we traditionally thought that they may not apply for. So I think people are challenging, rethinking their careers a lot more. Also, I think even in our supply chain workforce, which is very, very different, I think the entire paradigm has shifted in terms of what is traditionally a male-oriented job and so forth, right? And Tanvi talked about in the breweries, for instance, you would think about that. It also, by the way, is present in the supply chain side of the world. And we've seen that challenged quite a bit as well. So a lot more applicants coming in, a lot of more intake of talent, and also the dominant workforce being male in some of those spaces, they are also getting retrained and the awareness is increasing. In fact, we have some supply chain facilities that are women only now, running very successfully. So I think that's the paradigm shift I'm seeing in both mindset and in terms of how people are looking at their career, as well as the surrounding ecosystem as well. I remain very optimistic in that regard.
Got it. No, it's very true. I think, people are more willing to question everything given what we've gone through in the last 18 months. Lavanya, I'd love to hear from you on, women is obviously one group in the diversity pool. We've been focusing on it, and like all of you said, we've made progress and we're still working on it. But diversity obviously has a lot more within it. Can you both, educate us on, what are all the different pools that you actively think about, and, what are some of the strategies or nuances that we should keep in mind when thinking about diversity?
Absolutely. So at Genpact, like most organizations, and if you know us, we're a very process and metric driven organization. So the theory of do less but do it well is, one of the ethos of the organization. So we began actually our journey in 2015. 2011, focusing primarily on gender, so that we create that entire framework, ecosystem, and process almost of how we were going to try and build and develop and make meaningful outcomes. In about 2019, we hit 41% gender diversity as an organization, and we realized that our framework was really working effectively as far as our talent was concerned. And we said, now it's time to start expanding this portfolio into other areas and doing the same kind of meaningful work.
Right.
So we expanded into racial diversity, veterans, LGBTQ, impact workers, and impact workers will be people who come from various economic stratas of society, as well as underrepresented minorities, as well as people who've not had equity of opportunity, and so on, right? In that you expand the way you're functioning along with the LGBTQ plus community as well. Each of these spaces has fundamental nuances that you can't club them together, but it is possible to use a framework to run an important strategy that can be percolated across the organization. So we chose, the following 4 pillars: attract diverse talent, create a supportive ecosystem, create career and development opportunities, as well as constantly learn from the market. As I said, it's a very dynamic space. The minute you think you're an expert, you're beginning to fail. Then you have to keep learning and evolving with them. Under that framework, we focused really to begin with on the create a supportive ecosystem and building careers, because we said, what's the point of bringing talent in if you're not going to have the infrastructure and space to support them and grow them? So we started with a sponsorship program. It's called Pay It Forward. It cuts across all our pillars. And we have almost 3,500 people that are part of the sponsorship network and actively being sponsored by leaders across the organization. I don't pat myself on the back or the organization's back for that number, because we want to make sure that every high potential resource across the pyramid has a sponsor really pulling them through the system. The reason we call it Pay It Forward is we feel that if someone took a bold bet on you and wanted to work on you through the system, it's important for you to pay it forward. And like in that way, we're creating that synergy across the program. The second part being, as I said, over the last, I've been doing this for almost 6 years now. Unconscious bias is like the donkey that's been flogged to death because we've talked about it so much. But it's about evolving that from awareness to change and unconscious application, right? So that when you're actually in that moment, you are not demonstrating or giving into your natural biases, which is just being human, right? At the end of the day. So we've run an entire program across the organization that, of course, looks at unconscious bias, that focuses on conscious inclusion. But the part that I love most is the bystander sessions that we do, which is that the responsibility is on everyone. It's not just the person who's demonstrating the unconscious bias or the person who's receiving it. It is behoven to the culture of the organization to say, hey, that's not fair, that's not right, that has to change. Because that's when you start seeing the incremental movements in behavior, because ultimately that's the mountain we're trying to move. Having defined metrics against your program is important. Attendance, of course, and participation is a great one, but it's possibly the most meaningless one as well.
Yeah.
What you're looking at is how many people, what is your slate looking like? How many people are growing in the organization? How many people are attriting from the organization, from these groups? What is the feedback that they're giving? So we have a very specific mechanism focused on feedback from diverse talent who are leaving the organization, because that is the time you get it with great honesty and you can say, okay, these are the specific areas that we need to work on and build within us as an ecosystem. I mean, I'm conscious of the fact that I've been doing this for a really long time and lots to say on it. But yes, having the framework, making sure you're tracking your metrics against each program, never being satisfied with where you've arrived and constantly evolving, pulse to the ground and constantly checking with your employees, not with this is what we're delivering to you, but more in terms of what is it that you need and what you need us to deliver to you, is important. And lastly, I'll say to Krishna's point, you have to look at the entire organization, not as subsets, not as groups, and make sure you have very strong allyship programs so that the organization's every employee is supporting the agenda.
Got it. No, Lavanya, thank you for the answer. And no, it's useful to just get the get the whole pyramid of what we need to get done. I think the big takeaway for me is we started with saying a lot of companies do have DNI, and we had, I think, maybe in 2020 asked the question of how many of your DNI programs have an impact on your career or your well-being, and that number was less than 25%, right? So your whole point of involving the employee and crafting the program together, I think, is very relevant. Just not crafting the program thinking, we know the best practices and learnings. Tanvi, I'll come back to you quickly. You started with a great example of changing the profile of getting to a 50-50 in a brewery is truly changing the identity of the organization. So how does the DNY piece really influence the identity, and are you starting to see retention, engagement, some of these metrics go up?
Definitely, Sreyssha. I think if you ask me honestly, DNI no more is something to aspire for. It's table stakes. And as I said, right, the millennials and the Gen Z all the more are looking up to it as an important metric. And in fact, the efforts that I talked about, Sreyssha, we have seen a phenomenal improvement in the engagement that we have been driving across not just our India, but Southeast Asia, the entire BU. We had a record number of upwards of 90 engagement that we saw from people. So honestly, the data speaks for itself. What you can measure is what you can stand by. And we have seen that these efforts are actually playing a role. Another point I would like to highlight, Sreyssha, is it is not the policies and the HR-driven efforts only that drive it. And I would really pick on what Lavanya and Krishna, both of them said. It's every single employee, the part of the family who makes this happen, which can drive the inclusivity, which then ultimately translates into the engagement and the inclusion.
Got it. No, that's great. Let me do one quick round with all three of you on the same question. A lot of audience watching today will be playing a leadership role, and sometimes we do get carried away on this is the job of somebody else, or this is the job of HR or business, or somebody has gotten a target. I want to ask three of you, if you were to pick top three things leaders can do to move the needle, what would you suggest? Right? Forget all the policies, accountability. Just as a leader in an organization, what are three things to make sure that your organization becomes more inclusive? And maybe Krishna, I'll start with you.
Sure, Sreyssha. I think, I think all of us were talking about every employee needs to live the IND culture, right? And I think it starts at the leadership. So let me just address the leadership angle first. First is role modeling. So you can preach, you can have different policies, but as a leader, are you living by that credo, right? And are you able to actually role model that? So I think that is definitely one. Second is being an active sponsor of diversity in the company, in the sense that can you mentor, can you coach diverse talent across the company? That's something that you could definitely do. Three is, as Tanvi was talking about, as Lavanya was talking about, while you're sponsoring talent, can you keep a ear to the ground, right? You are leading, in many cases, very large set of employees in your business. Through the voices of the employee that are emerging from various quarters, can you closely partner with HR or other people practice functions in the company to actually even design and iterate over the next emergent or new age policies that need to be? Because you don't just need to be a receiver. You can also be a crafter. You can always also be a creator. Those are the three things that come to mind for me.
Great, thanks, Krishna. And I think you and the startup world has surely shown us that we can be creators on many of the D&Y policies. So thanks for finishing on that note. Lavanya?
For me, most importantly is accountability. Leaders need to be accountable and hold their teams accountable for driving diversity and inclusion, both from a data and fact perspective as well as from an inclusion perspective. Second thing is empathy as a leader, to be an empathetic leader. And I won't restrict that to just diverse groups. I'd expand that to all employees. The old days are changing. I think there's a different way of leadership that's required today. And the last thing I will say is objectivity and fairness, because it's human nature to get along with other people. We never say this, to like some people more than others, but as a leader, to have that objectivity in terms of how you develop and grow talent, whether it is through sponsorship, etc., is critical.
Got it. Great. Tanvi?
Tough one for me, Sreyssha. All the important points are covered by Krishna and Lavanya already, but I'll still go ahead.
Yeah, no, we want only innovative points. So
Sure.
The pressure is on.
So I think the first one, and I sort of made that point, every single person has to be part of it. And that's why it's the committees, including everyone from all walks of life. And to build on that, walking the talk, that's the most important thing that the leadership has to do. The second one I would talk about is creating the psychologically safe environment. So that everyone is comfortable bringing their true self, even if the diversity is there. And the third one I would talk about is something that Krishna touched upon, is taking the bets. And then post the bet is taken, coaching them for them to succeed. So those are the 3 points from my end.
No, great. Excellent. Thank you so much. I know we're almost at time, so I'm trying to keep us honest here, but thanks for taking the time, just listening to how you're thinking about it, and the progressiveness in terms of including the larger organization and crafting the agenda. I am not sure that has really truly trickled down. So I hope, that is something the viewers can take away. But maybe just a couple of things as well from the discussion that was quite powerful. I think moving from unconscious bias to conscious inclusion that Lavanya spoke about, the broader transition and thinking about, all groups, which I think both Tanvi, Krishna, both of you mentioned that, it's not pockets and designs for certain groups, but across the border. I love Krishna's point on, moving across and adding skills, giving that opportunity, because otherwise you get locked into certain roles forever. So advancement needs to be thought about differently. But Tanvi, to your point about psychological safety, as the groups and the diverse agenda expands, I think truly just creating an environment of psychological safety in itself will be a huge push to get an inclusive culture going. So thank you, team. Thanks again for having this very engaging conversation, and I can see the passion kind of oozing out of all three of you. So great to have you on the panel, and have a good day. I don't think we have too many questions from the audience, so I think we're good to close the session.